So from time to time, people online, they ask us, how do you calculate child support in Wisconsin?
Sure. The starting point to calculate child support is to ask two questions. One, what does the placement schedule look like for the kids between the two households? How many overnights is the general rule that each kid or the kids spend at each house? And then how much each parent makes. In cases where one parent has more than 75% of the overnights in a given year, the other parent is going to be paying a set percentage of their gross income from all sources. So for one kid, that would be 17%, two kids, 25%, and it goes up depending on how many kids there are. Now, if there's more of a shared placement schedule, each parent has more than 25% of the overnights in a given year, at that point, the courts employ what's called a shared placement calculator. They're available online. SterlingLawOffices.com has a great calculator. There's other calculators available as well to get an approximation of what child support might look like in your case.
Is there any difference between the scenarios you described there and someone that's really high income?
Yeah, there are different factors that come into play. There's low income calculations, there's high income calculations, there's if someone is paying for multiple children in multiple different families, there's different calculations that come into play. There are some factors that would really lend, in complicated cases, for people to reach out to attorneys to help guide them through that calculation, what they can expect in court.
So to get into some of the specifics, so what are the child support guidelines if you're going to be paying the set standard amount?
So if you're going to be paying the set standard amount, the court's going to look at your income from all sources. So at that point, they're going to look at your base income, if you have bonuses, commissions, if there's income or interest from investments, all that will count as income. If you're paying 17% of that to the other parent as child support, or if you're a high earner, a little bit less percentage, but approximately 17%, the courts are going to account for how much it costs a parent to cover the kids on insurance. That'll be adjusted in child support. And then there are equity arguments you can make to the court if there's not a need for that amount of child support. But for expectations, the courts generally do follow those guidelines in almost all cases. So more specifically, if you're paying guideline support, so you have less than 25% of the overnights, you can expect to pay for one child 17%, for two children 25%, for three children 29%, four 31%, and five 34%.
If there's a 50-50 placement schedule, some people will say 50-50 custody. Oftentimes we'll get search queries that say, does a father pay child support with 50-50 custody? So generally when parents share custody placement, kind of how is child support determined in that scenario?
Sure. So there is a formula that the courts will use. The general rule of thumb would be if there's a gap in or a difference in what each parent makes in a 50-50 placement arrangement, the higher earner will generally have some sort of support obligation, even on a 50-50 basis. The intent there is that the children should have access to approximately the similar lifestyles in both homes, if that makes sense.
So, and philosophically, can you talk a little bit about why the courts have that stance?
Yeah, I mean, the courts, in our practice, we run into cases, and you might have experienced this, people might have experienced this in their own lives. If there's a big disparity in income or resources available for children in one household over the other, it sometimes creates maybe not a conflict in the child, but a desire to be in one place or over the other. So the intent, even on these 50-50, is that the child will have a similar lifestyle in both parents' homes to reduce some of that conflict that can arise when finances are a concern.
It really seems like even in a 50-50 scenario, if there's a large income gap between the two households, there's still going to be child support paid. And the court is going to look at it from a perspective of what's in the best interest of the child in that scenario, trying to create two different two different households that have the same living standards, so the child doesn't desire one place over the other and inadvertently say, I like mom versus dad because mom's house is nicer.
Absolutely. And they're also, under those 50-50, if it's exactly 50-50, the parents are also going to be sharing equally in what we call variable expenses. So extracurricular activities for the kids, usually big purchase items if they're in sports or music, school fees, and then in all circumstances, the parents are going to share uninsured medical expenses for the kids too. So that is a benefit at the 50-50 that is not seen in the formulas.
Is child support based on gross income or net income?
Gross income, absolutely.
So that's not what you see in your bank account. That's what you see on your paycheck that you say, I wish I would have made that, but even though I only got to see this.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people feel that that's not a fair way to calculate it, but there's so many different ways to manipulate how much you withhold, what you contribute to retirement plans, that the courts feel, hey, let's cut out that games playing. It's based on gross income.
All right, so another question we get, can child support take your whole paycheck?
No, there are certain percentages that are set in stone that you can't garnish above. In a general sense, if you have a child support order, there's no arrears or you don't owe any back support, you're looking at child support cannot take more than say 50% of your check under those circumstances. There's a few other particular and case-specific triggers that might allow child support to garnish more than 50% of your check, but no more than 65% under any circumstance.
And how would they go about starting to decide what that garnishment amount is going to look like?
It's going to be in your court order, how much you're ordered to pay in child support. When there's an order in place, the child support agency is notified. They can contact your employer and start the garnishment process that way.
So essentially, if you're in a position where you're not paying child support and you develop an arrearage, and the child support agency is notified about it, they're going to proactively work to remedy that without going to court. Is that what I'm understanding?
They may reach out to you directly. Most oftentimes, the receiving parent or the child support agency themselves could file a motion for contempt for failure to pay child support.
And then at that point, that's when the garnishments would begin.
Yeah, if you have, if the court finds you in contempt and orders that, absolutely.
Thank you for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, and share. Your interaction with our content is greatly appreciated. Visit sterlinglawyers.com to learn more about our firm and meet our attorneys.